Have you ever wondered if the apocalyptic prophecies Jesus spoke of are unfolding right before our eyes? A prophecy so chilling that it warns of a beast set to rise after 5 unmistakable signs? What if I told you these signs are no longer distant warnings but realities creeping into our daily lives? Today, we dive deep into Jesus' message about the beast and the 5 signs that show we are closer than ever to that haunting moment. What is the beast Jesus warned about? When Jesus spoke of the beast, he was referring to a powerful, evil figure who would emerge in the end times, representing tyranny, deception, and brutal control over humanity. This beast is not just a mythical creature, but a symbol of profound spiritual and political destruction. The book of Revelation, written by John, describes the beast as a force opposed to God, deceiving many and wielding unimaginable influence. But Jesus' warnings offer clues, not about just the beast itself, but about what will signal its arrival. Understanding these signs is crucial because they act like a countdown to the beast's rise. What are these signs, and why do they matter so much? Sign 1. The rise of false prophets and deceptive miracles. One of the earliest signs Jesus mentioned is the emergence of false prophets performing deceptive signs and wonders. This isn't just about disinformation. It's a spiritual phenomenon that has far-reaching consequences. In today's world, where information spreads rapidly through social media and news outlets, false teachers have an unprecedented platform to convince millions. They often claim divine authority or miraculous powers, luring people away from authentic faith. But why does this matter so much? Because these false prophets prepare the spiritual and psychological landscape for the beast's rise. The Bible warns that even the elect, those deeply rooted in faith, could be deceived by such displays. Think about the recent surge in claims of healings, miracles, and prophetic revelations that are frequently scrutinized and sometimes debunked, yet still captivate vulnerable audiences. This deception is dangerous because it distorts the truth. Instead of leading people toward God, it plants seeds of confusion about morality, salvation, and the nature of good and evil. Many get trapped in cults or movements that promise hope but deliver control, confusion, or despair. In addition, these false prophets often align themselves with political or social movements, blurring lines between faith and power. When spiritual deception intersects with global agendas, it paves the way for entities like the beast to claim authority. The spiritual blindness they foster weakens the guardrails protecting human freedom and souls. So, the rise of false prophets isn't just a religious crisis. It's a major sign of the times. Are you tuned in enough to recognize when someone is using spectacular miracles as a veil for deeper deception? Understanding this sign means guarding your heart and mind carefully. Sign 2. Wars and rumors of wars. The second sign involves the prevalence of wars and rumors of wars. This phrase, found in Jesus' teachings, signals a time of escalating global conflict that can easily push people into fear and despair. Today, tensions between nations, proxy wars, and political strife dominate our news cycles. Whether it's the persistent conflicts in the Middle East, territorial disputes in Asia, or rising friction between great powers, the world is witnessing a fragile peace that seems to be cracking. But Jesus tells us not to be alarmed. Why? Because these wars are symptoms of a far bigger spiritual conflict. They are manifestations of growing turmoil on earth, not the final battle itself. Each conflict destabilizes governments, economies, and societies, creating chaos where fear and uncertainty thrive. The beast gains advantage in such chaos, as desperate populations are easier to manipulate or control. Historically, wars have often accelerated global power shifts, sometimes paving the way for authoritarian rulers. The beast is described as a ruler with vast political authority, someone who benefits from unrest and claims to bring order out of chaos. The spiritual layers beneath the physical conflict reveal a war for the hearts and minds of humanity. Yet, these wars are also a call for vigilance and faith. In the midst of turmoil, Jesus encourages believers not to succumb to panic, but rather hold fast to hope and truth. This tension between fear and faith is a central spiritual battleground in these times. Are we prepared to see through the headlines and grasp the spiritual meaning behind the wars around us? Watching these events closely helps us recognize how close the beastly powers might be rising. Sign 3. Natural disasters increasing in frequency and severity. The Bible's end-time prophecies include natural disasters, famines, earthquakes, pestilences, occurring with increasing frequency and severity. Observers today point to a rise in catastrophic events worldwide. Massive earthquakes, devastating hurricanes, intense droughts, and unprecedented floods. Science explains many of these as consequences of climate change and natural cycles, but the biblical perspective sees these events as more than just natural phenomenons. They are warnings. Why do these disasters matter as signs? For one, they test humanity's resilience and resources. Each disaster challenges governments, disrupts food supplies, and causes widespread suffering. These conditions, Scripture suggests, wear down societies and make people more desperate for strong leadership, even if that leadership comes at a great spiritual cost. Furthermore, these catastrophes can be seen as divine awakenings, warnings designed to shake complacency and call humanity back to humility and dependence on God. The Bible speaks of these events as birth pains, heralding a new era with increasing intensity as the final day approaches. But natural disasters do more than just create physical damage. They also create spiritual vulnerability. During times of crisis, people often search for answers, sometimes turning to false prophets or political figures who promise quick solutions. This dynamic sets the stage for the beast's appeal, a figure offering security, order, and prosperity at a terrible price. Understanding these natural disasters as part of prophetic signs invites us to ask important questions. Are we responding to these crises with faith and wisdom? Are we prepared for what might come next? The growing intensity of these disasters isn't just a headline, it's a deeply spiritual alarm. Sign 4. Persecution of believers. Another critical sign Jesus mentioned is the persecution of true believers. Around the world today, brave men and women face imprisonment, harassment, or worse, simply for their faith. In countries where religious freedom is restricted, Christians and other believers are often targeted for refusing to conform to state-sponsored ideologies or dominant belief systems. This isn't new in history, but the scale and intensity seem to be increasing in this era. Why is persecution a sign of the beast's coming? Because it shows that forces opposed to God's people are gaining power and are increasingly intolerant of dissent or alternative loyalty. The beast's reign is marked by demand for allegiance that supersedes all else. Those who refuse to bow face oppression. Persecution also acts as a spiritual test and refining process. For many believers, suffering strengthens faith and witness. It exposes true commitment beyond convenience or cultural pressures, but it also warns the world is becoming less hospitable to God's truth, setting the conditions for the beast's dominion. In addition, the global surveillance state and control over communication make it easier for oppressive regimes to silence believers and limit their influence. This raises the stakes even higher. Faithfulness may come at great personal cost. This sign challenges viewers. How would you respond if your faith made you a target? Would you stand firm or compromise? The growing persecution calls for courage, prayer, and unshaken hope, preparing hearts for the spiritual battles ahead. Sign 5. The global effort toward a one-world system. The final sign is perhaps the most encompassing. The world moving toward a one-world system politically, economically, and religiously. The Bible foretells a time when a centralized global authority will govern trade, worship, and politics, an environment in which the beast thrives. Today, we see increasing global cooperation and integration, multinational organizations, a push toward digital currencies, and some calls for unified religious dialogue. On the surface, global unity sounds positive, promoting peace, solving global challenges, and improving trade. But beneath that promise lies a potential risk: loss of national sovereignty, restricted freedoms, and enforced conformity. The Bible warns that this centralized control will come with a demand for worship or allegiance to the beast. The development of universal identification systems, cashless societies, and global political alliances align closely with these prophetic signs. Such frameworks enable leaders to monitor and control populations in ways unimaginable before. Religiously, efforts to merge diverse faiths into a single collective identity could pave the way for falsified worship systems that replace biblical truth with syncretism, another mark of the beast's spiritual authority. This sign forces us to consider, are these global efforts the dawn of lasting peace or the prelude to spiritual and political tyranny? Will individuals maintain their freedom and faith in the face of overwhelming pressure to conform? Understanding this sign equips us to discern what is happening behind the headlines and encourages believers to hold fast to truth as global forces shape a future world order. Are these signs really happening? If you look around carefully, these 5 signs are undeniably manifesting. False teachings abound, conflicts rage worldwide, natural disasters increase, believers face mounting persecution, and global powers push unity in ways never seen before. But what should we do in light of this? Jesus didn't just warn us to fear, he called for vigilance, faithfulness, and hope. What does this mean for us today? The rise of the beast is a spiritual and practical challenge. It's a call for spiritual awareness and readiness. Jesus encourages believers not to be overwhelmed by fear, but to anchor their lives in truth, love, and endurance. The question remains, will you discern the times? Will you stand firm when the beast demands loyalty? History shows that those who choose truth over comfort, faith over fear, become beacons in the darkest hours. Is there hope beyond the beast? Yes. Jesus promises ultimate victory over the beast. His resurrection and return will bring judgment and justice. But until then, the signs are clear and the warning is urgent. The beast's coming is not the end of God's story, but the climax that precedes a new beginning. Are you watching and preparing? The signs are here, shaping our present and future alike.